Full time, Australia versus South Africa. South Africa comes away with the win, 30-12. And weather played a major factor in this game as far as mishandles and things and plays of that nature, I should say. And I do have to say, Australia started off this game very spirited, high level, physical, fast, aggressive, and they really put South Africa on their heels early in the match. In the first 10 minutes, I'll say, where they took the lead off that penalty goal, 3-0. And it was nice to see. What I really appreciate about Australia coming out in this match, you could tell that they played with a chip on their shoulder, and they really wanted to start off and really enforce their will upon South Africa and show that they weren't scared, and making up for that, that blowout last week. And I really like that Australia came out and showed an aggressive pace, and they were really showing really strong physical play. They were putting set pieces together. And I do have to say, I have to give a shout out to that winger, man, Marika Kolobete. That man is absolutely exceptional. I heard about him prior, but this is my first time ever seeing him play in action, and I think he added that physicality and speed that Australia needed. He was an impact player for me. Having him on the field, I could tell shifted the energy for Australia, because the way he was playing that high ball, going against Cheslin Kolbe, there's just a physicality, there's a nature about that man, that he has that leadership quality. And it seems like Australia really rallied behind the energy and the pace of Marika Kolobete. And I think he is an absolutely incredible and exceptional player for Australia. And it was nice to see him on the pitch, because there were plays where he was not making as many, I would say, impact line breaks like Cheslin Kolbe was doing. Like Cheslin Kolbe found gaps and he was making plays that only Cheslin Kolbe can do. But Marika Kolobete, he was finding those aggressive, physical, dominant plays and just playing that smash mouth rugby, and really just putting the pressure on the wing and just really putting his force into people. And I really love seeing that, man. But you could tell he has just that strong physical nature. He has incredible speed as well. The line breaks weren't there for him, but he was making those breaks happen. He was able to break tackles and, really make opportunities become present in the game just because of his gameplay. So I have to give him a massive shout out. He was like my Australian player of the match, and I'm starting to learn the Australian side, their players' names, and getting more familiar with their side. And I really enjoyed what they put together this weekend. I know they lost, but I feel like they're starting to get the pieces in play and starting to really restructure that Australian side. And it was great to see. They have a lot of aggressive, dominant players, and I think they're really building and capitalizing on the talent that they have in that system right now. And it'll be cool to see them grow, because I know Australia's a side growing up that I knew was dominant in the world of rugby, and it's a side that we need to have play high level rugby, right? Because it's fun to see the Southern Hemisphere when you're having that competition where it's not just between a New Zealand and a South Africa always winning. You want to have a strong Argentinian side. You want to have a strong Australian side. It's needed in the world of rugby to continue to uplift the game and make it grow, right? Like the cream rises to the top, but the competition level rises with the nations that are putting pressure and applying pressure and making these teams forced to level up their game plans and improve. So I think Australia will eventually get to that point. It seems like they're on the right track, but I just have to give a massive shout out to Kolobete. I think he played an exceptional game today, and he really was that fire plug for Australia. But going into this one, man, dominant start for Australia. About to that 10-minute point, like I said, the conditions with the rain made for a sloppy game. There was a lot of mishandles from the South African side starting out initially, and the play I'm thinking about specifically, like when Cheslin Kolbe, he was getting loose on the wing, he made an exceptional line break. He just found the gap, and it looked like he was going to break towards the try and get a solo try, but then he tried to offload it to was it Sasha? He offloaded it to the right, and Sasha, if he would have not mishandled it, he had a clear line to score a try, but he just mishandled it and dropped the ball. And that's just due to the conditions. It was wet, it was raining, the field was in shambles a little bit, but they did the best they could, and it created, just some mishandles within the game. But both sides were able to manage that. And at the 10-minute mark, where did I have? The 10-minute mark is the conditions for the mishandling, but at the 16-minute mark for South Africa. This is when they caught gear. They started to put it together. And you know the play I'm referencing. You had Lakanyo passes it to Jesse Qrew. Jesse Qrew gets the ball, passes it to Mapimpi. Mapimpi, boom, kicks it. Beautiful grubber. Down the wing, you have Afalela Fassi get that try, grounds it. Absolutely beautiful setup, and just the fluidity, the cohesion, the beauty and grace and touch on that play was exceptional. They just set it up, and it was just so smooth. It was seamless, and it was beautiful play to watch. That was one of my plays of the match for me, just because of just how it all came together, and the way they set that up was just something of beauty. So I just have to give that play a shout out from the South African side. And then they just started to put it together and get in gear and start pulling away, in a sense. Not really in the first half. The first half was very competitive. You had a very close score line, and Australia, man, what a wasted opportunity. They had a chance at half to kick that penalty goal to take the lead, and that would have just given them so much spark going into the shed, getting that penalty conversion, and they missed it to the right, and they go down at half by 2. And it was just one of those plays where I think it's just the inexperience and the inconsistency from Australia. And, you know, those are the goals that they have to make, because I think that just really would have given them a lift going into half. Being ahead of the Springboks in the second test match of this series, it would have been that spark they needed to go into the locker room and give them that motivation, giving them that momentum that they would have needed coming out of the second half, because you knew the bomb squad was sitting there waiting to come on. And you know, that could have been a potential lift, and it could have shifted the narrative of this game, but they missed it going down at half. And I think that was like sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, because they weren't able to capitalize on that opportunity. And when the second half came on, it was all Springboks from the 40th to the 80th minute. You know, and I like Sonny Bill Williams. He came on. He coined the bomb squad. He named them the nuclear bomb squad, which I absolutely loved, just because they were just blowing things apart. And they didn't really get a chance to utilize the bomb squad how we usually see them with scrums, because of the uncontested scrums that happened. Australia happened to be down 2 props, and at that point they had to bring in a hooker. But if they were playing down a man, so it was 15-14, they were down a man for a little bit. And then there was I don't know what it's called, is it HIC? Correct me if I'm wrong. HIC or something like that. They were down a man, but they were able to bring on another man to fill in that 15 spot. He happened to be a hooker to play a prop, and so they had to run uncontested scrums where Australia would just get it and have to do their set pieces. And it basically null and voided the nuclear bomb squad, or the bomb squad, because they weren't able to pressure them and wear down Australia's front, or Australia's forwards. And so that was a unique thing that I haven't seen in rugby before, having those uncontested scrums. So it changed the dynamic of the game when it came to, you know, applying that pressure, putting their weight on Australia. But South Africa owned the entire second half, and they just put on a clinic. I would say it wasn't the best match for South Africa, I'll say that, but they did what they had to do. They tried their new 10-man line-out, a completely new lineup, and I think they did a great job. Malcolm Marx was the player. He was the man of the match for me. 2 tries, man, absolutely exceptional. I know there was a little bit of controversy, because when they got into that maul, he slipped, but I didn't see his hand come off the back of the maul, so it's like he kept in contact with the maul, and he got back on his feet and scored the try. I know there was a little bit of controversy about that, saying that he broke away from the maul, but I think having his left hand on, I think he may maintain contact with it. I want to know your thoughts on that call. I thought it was fair, and but I could see it go both ways. But on my opinion, I thought it was a fair that they didn't assess a penalty or anything on that one. Then he was able to score the try. But Malcolm Marx played an exceptional game. Steph DeToy was amazing as always. Jesse Qrew was incredible. Cheslin Colby, he didn't get any tries, but that man was making plays happen. He was, you know, he had the typewriter feet going. That man was finding space line breaks. He had a few massive line breaks, just wasn't able to capitalize on his line breaks. So overall, he had the most explosive plays of the game. Marika Korobete, he had just physical plays and created space because of his physicality, and that man was a spark plug for Australia. So he was one of the man of the matches for Australia for me. But I would have to say Malcolm Marks, Jesse Qrew, Detoy did an exceptional job. Who else did we have? Fossey did a great job. Sasha, that kid is class, man. That dude is an exceptional player, and what a leader, right? I know he got the player of the match, and when he was talking to SBW, he was sitting there, they mentioned, he said, why am I up here? He felt like he did not deserve the player or the man of the match, and that other players did. And that type of humility that he has at such a young age, I have no doubt he's going to be one of what do you call a Hall of Fame player in not only the South African rugby system, but the world of rugby. What an incredible player. He has a boot on him. He has a foot on him. He has IQ out of the galaxy, and just an exceptional player. There's not enough great things that I can say about Sasha. Very impressive, not only from an athletic standpoint, but just as a personal standpoint. He handles himself with the highest class and dignity, and is just so humble in that respect for a young age. So shout out to his upbringing, his family who supported him, his coaches, mentors, and he's just absolutely just an incredible player for the world of rugby, because he's somebody that kids can look up to and aspire to be, because he just carries himself with so much quality, respect, and he has a respect for the game and others. He looks at his team as the mentor, so he's never putting the fame on himself. He always looks outside and says, I can only be great because of the players that I'm surrounded by in this system. So he's very humble. That would just be the best word for me. I really like the way he plays. But let's jump over to the stats, crew, and check this out in a little bit more detail. Let me move this over. All right, so this is what I wanted to look at for the stats at halftime. This is it was 11-9 going into half. We know that Australia missed that penalty goal, but here's the breakdown I want to look at half, and then we'll look at the full-time stats. 56-44 territory, Springboks won that advantage. Possessions were 50-50. They were even going in at half. The opponent's 22 visit was 6-2. South Africa had that advantage. 50-42 carries. South Africa wins that one. But look at this. Carry meters made. 286 carries compared to 95 meters made going into half. Almost 3 lengths of the field for South Africa. So for Australia to stay in this game in the first half, hats off to them, because this stat, they could have given away more points than what they did early on. So they did a fantastic job staying in the fight and making a game of it early on. Tackle rate success, 92% to 90. So it was a close there, but the Wallabies win that battle. And then penalties conceded, 5-3. That's speaking to how sloppy the Springboks played in the beginning. I would say not sloppy. They were just unorganized in the beginning. I would say the first 10 minutes, where they conceded a penalty in the first 2 minutes. Australia gets that penalty goal, but the Springboks were able to start putting it together and played more mistake-free rugby at the beginning. I think the biggest tell of the first half for me was just the errors that were made, the mishandles and things like that. Going into the full-time stats, we have the point flow chart. We see that Australia led with that the 3 points, and then it was all Springboks from there on out. So minutes in the lead, 66-13. The Boks had it. Percentage of the lead in the game, 83-16. Jeez, 83-16. It just completely blew them out the window. And in the last 10 minutes, 58-42 percentage, it goes to the Boks. So points in the last 10 minutes, 7 for South Africa. Looking at the key events, we had that penalty goal within the first 2 minutes of the match going towards Australia. Then we had Sasha knotting it up with the penalty goal at the 15th minute. Afalela Fassi, that was that beautiful set piece from to Qrew to Mapimpi. Mapimpi grubbers it to Fassi, who gets that try on the outside. Absolutely beautiful setup. A penalty goal at the 20th minute for Australia. What is it? Lolesio I like that name, by the way. That's a dope name. I'm getting more familiar with the Australian side, so I'm about to show. I want to show as much respect to the Australian side and knowing their names and the players they have on that side. So I'm continuing to learn their roster and getting more familiar with the players on that squad. Then we have the penalty goal with Feinberg. He scored at the 25th minute, and this was the penalty goal going into half. You know, not this one actually. They convert the penalty goal, and then they had the opportunity to get a penalty goal going into the half, and he missed it. He missed it to the right, which would have given them the 12-11 lead going in the half. That would have been a massive confidence builder and booster for Australia, and they just didn't capitalize on that opportunity, unfortunately for them. And they went in the half down 11-9, and they just never got a chance to get back into the game after that, because you had Van Staden started out in the second minute of the second half, gets the try. South Africa gets the conversion, and then Lolesio, he gets his penalty goal, and that would be the last points that Australia scores for the entire game. You have Malcolm Marx that was that initial maul where he gets his first points. Then we have the yellow card going against Australia, and we have Marx getting his second try, and then Pollard cleaning it up with the conversion. So it was all South Africa in the second half. Like we mentioned, Australia had a chance to put themselves in the lead in the first going into halftime, but just didn't capitalize. I keep on saying it, that just would have been such a mental boost and an energy shot going into half, knowing that, you know, you're ahead of the two-time defending World Cup champions, and it would have been a highlight for Australia going in, but they weren't able to capitalize. But, you know, overall a very solid first half to them, and the second half was just all South Africa. So if we look at the 22-meter entries, 5 entries for Australia, 13 to South Africa, 2.3 average points scored for South Africa compared to the 0.6 scored for Australia. And, you know, they weren't able to capitalize and put points on the board. Australia played a solid first half, but South Africa was dominant in the second. Looking at the 22-meter entry, 13 for South Africa, 5 for Australia. 2.31 22-meter conversions compared to 0.6 for Australia. Line breaks 6-3. South Africa took advantage of those line breaks. I know Colby had 2 by himself that were, you know, they were explosive line breaks, but man, you know, there were a lot of great plays on both sides, and I think just the line breaks from it may have been not just Marika who made line breaks, but he was just a player that just sticks out in my mind for Australia. And also Nick White for Australia he played a solid game as well. As far as carries, 96-89, the Boks take that advantage. Kicks 32-28, Australia takes that. And post meter contacts 165-116, South Africa wins on the attacking side profile for post meter contacts. Looking at the defensive breakdown, as far as dominant tackles, Australia wins all the categories except for the final one, which is tackle offloads allowed. As far as the stat breakdown goes, Qrew, I ask that you continue to educate me on these stats, because as I'm reading some of these, I know there's some of the data can be skewed as far as where it shows like the advantage to a particular side, where it's really not an advantage, it's like a disadvantage. So I appreciate you continuing to educate me on what the stats mean within the world of rugby and how they may not always tell the full picture, because sometimes when they're showing, you know, the possession advantage or on the side of the field, it's skewed because sometimes scrums are happening on that side of the field or lineouts, and it's awarded to, you know, the opposition where there may not be the advantage. It just so happens that those plays are happening on that half of the field. So I appreciate you continuing to educate me as I continue to learn more about the stat breakdowns in the world of rugby. But looking at dominant tackles, 5-4, Australia wins that. Tackles made, 117-116. Tackles missed, 12-10, Australia. Turnovers won, 4-3. And that's, yeah, I'm trying to think, like, there were some good turnovers, but it was mostly mishandles that I can really identify as far as the turnover causes and the errors that happen. Turnovers won, 4-3. Tackle turnovers 2-1, Australia, and then tackle offloads allowed 5-3. South Africa wins in that category. As far as ruck speed and like speed to ball, ruck speed 0-3, 60-51%, South Africa, 29-24% within the 3 to 6 second ruck speed, Australia takes that advantage, and then the 6+ seconds, 14-8, for Australia. And I know the rucks are sort of null and void. Well, no, the scrums are null and void, but the ruck speeds were even 68 to 68. And I was thinking about the scrums just because they're uncontested. And the last 5 penalties, 2 to South Africa and 3 to Australia. But let's go up to the stats really quickly and just take a look at the possession side of the game and territory. So we took a look at all these stats, but as far as the territory, it shows that 49% compared to 51% of the territory, and it shows that it has South Africa as the mark, but it's 51. Says Australia has the territory in this respect, but the possession, this is where I'll need your help even more on understanding the possession side, because I know, and even listening to the broadcast team about how these stats can be a little skewed based on like the contact zones that are happening where plays are set up. So we'll just read it for what it is now, and I'll ask for to continue to educate on this part of the possession and understanding it a little bit better. So I'm saying it correctly and having a full, complete understanding of the possession breakdown. But what we have right here, it shows that the possession in the last 10 minutes, 58% to South Africa, 42% for Australia. And then overall possessions was 51 to 49. But if we're looking at the possession for Australia, it shows that they were on the opposing side 55% of the time within that 50-meter area, and only within the 22-meter entry line, they were only in that side for 13%. And they were in their half 15 on their 22-meter entry, and then 18 on that 50 to the 22. But looking at South Africa, we have that 50 to 22 meter area. They're 37% of the possession, and then within their 22 meter entry, they're at that 28% range or whatever. But that's where like a lot of the gritty plays were happening. Like when Malcolm Marx was scoring all of his points, they were really dominant in that area. 10% in their own 22, and then 25% within their own 50 to that 22 meter. Set plays, pretty much went through all of these ones. Well, 13 scrums compared to 14. And this is where the stats I feel are skewed because of those the uncontested scrums. Because Australia was, they were awarded the scrums, but since they didn't have that full line out to really run a true scrum, I think this is why their scrum percentage and wins are so high. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that stat, but that's where I think I believe these numbers are skewed in that favor, especially after watching the game. The attacking side, 11 passes to 108, ball carries 96 to 89, post meter contacts, we saw that 165 for South Africa, 116 for Australia, line break 6 to 3. And then the turnovers, and these are due to the conditions. I just think it was just such sloppy conditions, and the mishandling was because the ball was wet. 15 turnovers lost to South Africa compared to the 12 for Australia. And then we had penalties going on here. But overall, I really enjoyed this match. It was fun to watch. I think both sides put on a show. It was nice to see Australia come out and be dominant in that first half, in a sense, or in that first 10 minutes. They were really putting it on. But I really enjoyed this match. My game of the weekend was New Zealand, though, as far as like the way they came out and were so dominant. But this was a very fun match to watch, and just seeing how both teams, put on a fun game in such bad rugby conditions with all the rain and all that. Overall, massive win for South Africa, a clean sweep over there in Australia. They have, I believe it's a 2-week break until the Clash of the Titans happen. New Zealand's flying over to South Africa, and that's going to be the match of, well, my summer, right? So it's my summer and eventually turning fall here in a little bit, but that's going to be the match. So these next 2 weeks are going to be very telling. We're going to see how the lineouts, or I always say lineouts, the lineups are set up for both sides, and that's going to be very interesting matchup. And with South Africa, they took advantage of all the points they could within this tournament. They have 10 points in the bracket. New Zealand has 5. I believe Argentina has 4, and then Australia has 0. So South Africa took advantage of their bonus points. They maxed out 10, and so they're leading right now in the standings. And it's just going to be fun to see these two nations go at it at one another. But I really enjoyed this match between South Africa and Australia. I think both sides did an exceptional job. I know what Eben Etzebeth, he won the Nelson Mandela that plaque, which was cool to see, and the whole team was celebrating at the end. But it was good to see Australia come out and play a better brand of rugby. and make it competitive, especially early starting in the match. And then South Africa was able to pull away in the end. It wasn't the best game ever, I will say, and I just think that was due to the lack of scrums, because we're so used to seeing the scrums and seeing that grittiness within the game. But with the uncontested scrums, it made it a little bit more different as far as the way the game was played and how the last 20 minutes of the game wrapped up. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I want to know your thoughts below, Qrew, and I want to know your predictions on the upcoming matches for New Zealand versus South Africa in South Africa. I got to come up with some predictions on that one, but I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to these next few weeks, and we will catch you on the next one. Qrew, I love you. I appreciate you. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Our description's below. Drop into our Discord where we talk offline, talk life, family, share pictures, videos, and talk about upcoming rugby matches and our analysis and thoughts on the games that have happened. So we'll catch you in Discord, and always stay laser focused on your dreams and your vision, and remember that you're in control. I love you. Peace.